Please keep standing by. to working with you. I'd also like to congratulate Commissioner Blair on the birth of his, I believe, fourth child on Monday. I think it really shows his dedication to the NCPC that he has abandoned his wife and large family to join us for what promises to be a barn burner of a meeting. I'd also like to report on a delegated item that I took action on this month. Certain authorities were delegated to me by the Commission on March 6, 2025. I approved the transfer of jurisdiction of lands earlier this month from the National Park Service to the District of Columbia Department of Transportation. The transferred issue is for 2 areas of land currently under the jurisdiction of NPS within Anacostia Park. The transfers will allow DDOT to reconstruct the existing Anacostia Avenue Bridge over the former Pepco Station cooling water inlet with 2 12-foot travel lanes and a new 10-foot wide sidewalk. With that, we'll move on to agenda item 5, which is the report of the Executive Director, Marcel Acosta.
Thank you, Chair Sharp, and good afternoon. I just have one item today. We bid farewell to urban planner Brittany Drakeford, who joined NCPC in 2022 and served with us for 4 years. Brittany served as NCPC's representative to the DC Board of Zoning Adjustments and contributed to the Making DC Safe and Beautiful initiative, the Comprehensive Plan Update, Commemoration Planning, and our internship program. We thank Brittany for her many contributions to the agency and wish her the best as she completes her doctoral dissertation in urban and regional planning at the University of Maryland. And I look forward to calling her Dr. Brittany Drakeford soon. You have my written reports in your packets, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Marcel. Do any commissioners have any questions for our Executive Director? I will just echo Marcel's sentiments, wishing Brittany best of luck as she hopefully concludes her doctorate, and thank her for her service to this commission. Agenda item 6 is our legislative update from our Secretary and esteemed General Counsel, Megan Hoddle-Cox. Megan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While there has been some movement on relevant legislation this month, none of it's time sensitive. So given the length of today's agenda, I will provide a detailed update on pending legislation to the Commission next month. But I'm happy to answer any questions if commissioners have any.
Thank you, Megan. Do any commissioners have questions or comments for Megan at this time? Seeing none, we'll proceed to agenda item 7, which is our unfinished business from our last meeting. You may recall that when we closed our last meeting in March, we had a pending motion on the floor, which was a motion to approve preliminary and final site and building plans for the East Wing Modernization Project. That motion was made by Commissioner Dixon and seconded by Commissioner Schaefer and unanimously tabled for consideration at today's meeting. Before we get started, I do want to address Judge Leon's preliminary injunction in the lawsuit brought by the National Trust for Historic Preservation regarding this project. As I read that injunction, that is which is, I should say, stayed for the next 2 weeks, which also includes ample exclusions to allow for some continued construction on the site. That order really does not impact our action here today. The NCPC is not a party to that lawsuit. The injunction doesn't speak to the NCPC review process. From my perspective, we have a project before us. We've been asked to review it, and that's really our job here today. And if there's no further objection or if there's no further desire to comment on Judge Leon's order, we'll move past that and continue our consideration of the East Wing Modernization Project at this time. The second note I would have before we begin our deliberations on this subject, as the Commission may be aware, as the Commission is aware, after our March meeting, there were a number of updates to that project. Most notably, the project applicants have now eliminated the stairs adjacent to the south portico of the proposed ballroom and have also modified the southwest corner stair to include a switchback. NCPC staff provided a brief addendum explaining the changes to the Commission yesterday, which was also posted on our website. Overall, the layout, other than those 2 modifications, is not substantially different than what we previously considered. And I will say that the proposed revisions actually do reflect a lot of the feedback that the project applicants heard from NCPC at that meeting. NCPC staff is of the opinion that this constitutes a significant improvement to the project, which will help preserve the hierarchy of the south elevation of the executive residence, and just generally improve the view sheds and I'd say symbolic. I'm trying to pick my words carefully here. The symbolic nature of the south portico of the White House as it currently stands. Therefore, before we move into deliberation on this project as a whole, I'd like to move for an amendment to the original motion that we currently have on the floor by suggesting that we add the following to the commission action here as suggested in the staff addendum, which was previously circulated. And that addition is that we note that the applicant has updated the project design to eliminate the stairs extending from the south portico and modify the stairs at the southwest corner of the project to include a switchback, and that the staff supports the proposed project updates, particularly the removal of the south portico stair, which will help reinforce the south elevation of the executive mansion as the primary facade. With that being my motion, I'd ask at this time for a second.
Second.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Levenbach. Is there any discussion on this item or questions on this item before we proceed to voting on this amendment to the EDR? This is obviously not the vote or deliberations on the project as a whole, but merely on this amendment to the EDR. Seeing no questions or comments, Madam Secretary, can you please confirm the amendment motion and second and take the vote by roll call?
Yes, the amendment motion was made by Chairman Scharf and seconded by Vice Chairman Levenbach. Commissioner Solisas? Commissioner Stidham?
Yes.
Commissioner Argo?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Levenbach?
Yes.
Chairman Scharf?
Yes.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Administrator Forst?
Yes.
Commissioner Dixon?
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson? Commissioner Henderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Giacchetti? Commissioner Giacchetti?
Yes. Sorry.
Thank you. The amended motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. With that, I'll now open it up to the Commission for discussion on the amended motion to approve preliminary and final site and building plans for the East Wing Modernization Project with the language we just added incorporated into the EDR. I'd actually like to start discussion today. And I'd like to start off just by reading some relevant press clippings. First, from the Washington Post, this attempt to modernize the White House has destroyed its historic value. Second, from the New York Times, a sacrifice of history for convenience. Also from the Times, extravagance for a public building. And lastly, from the Telegraph, a prioritization of grandeur over the needs of ordinary citizens. Now, none of these quotes relate to the ballroom project now before us. The first of these was about Teddy Roosevelt's construction of the West Wing. The second was about the Nixon-era construction of the press room in the West Colonnade. The third was actually about Chester A. Arthur's 1880s renovations of the Executive Mansion. And the fourth was about Andrew Jackson's construction of the North Portico to the Executive Mansion in 1830. Criticism and sky-is-falling pronouncements from so-called historic preservationists and their allies in the press are therefore nothing new to the history of the White House. While some might wish for history and the world to stand still, the fact of the matter is that the White House complex has constantly evolved to meet the programmatic needs of the federal government and the office of the president which it houses. And it is in that context in which I believe we must now review the ballroom project that is before this commission. I believe that in time, this ballroom will be considered every bit as much of a national treasure as the other key components of the White House. And I believe that in time, the nation and successive presidents of both parties and all political stripes long into the future will be grateful to President Trump for having initiated and brought this project into being. I'd like to speak to our process on this particular project. As chairman of this commission, which has a lineage and history dating back over a century, I feel very strongly about the fact that the work that we do is important, and I feel that we have been unfairly slighted in the press and otherwise for the way we've gone about reviewing this particular project. The NCPC has a professional staff that I've come to know and recognize as doing consistently exceptional work as they and we as a commission go about our job of protecting and preserving the aspects of the capital region that make it a particular public treasure for our great nation. And the notion that we have been less than thorough, that we have not met our obligations, is frankly insulting to the work that our team has done on this project and by implication on so many others as well. So let me lay out that process now. We began formal consultations with the White House's project team in December. I was at one of those first meetings where we discussed project goals, project timelines, and where the core interests of this commission were advocated for quite vigorously. Our staff engaged with the project team, as we do on so many projects, and the overall project now before us began to take shape. In January, 3 months ago, the White House team, represented by Office of Administration Director Josh Fisher and lead architect Shalom Baranis, gave an extensive public presentation on the project and what they were looking to build and achieve. We gave substantial feedback. Members of this commission had the opportunity to express the concerns and qualms that some of them had, and I would note that many members of this commission were also fulsome with their praise for the project's goals and ultimate objective. I thought Shalom Baranis was quite compelling in addressing the concerns that were raised and addressing questions about the design choices made and the nature of the project at issue. After the January meeting, we set out to devise a schedule that would allow for a full and fair review of the ballroom project. I was guided in setting out that schedule by the professional staff at the NCPC, who obviously have a lot of experience in these matters, as well as by my fellow members of the executive committee of this commission, Vice Chairman Stuart Levenbach and Commissioner Arrington Dixon. As our longest serving member, I leaned on Commissioner Dixon in particular for his views on what was appropriate, and we as a team ended up deferring to our staff's recommended review timeline, balancing the need and our desire for a comprehensive public comment period with our reciprocal desire to not unnecessarily hold up a priority project for our partners at the White House. Last month at our March meeting, the White House team presented again. We saw in many respects that our feedback had been heard and had an impact. The removal of the south pediment of the proposed ballroom was, for example, in my view, a great improvement on the original design that we had seen, reducing the massing of the proposed ballroom significantly and improving the coherence of the architecture of the new project with the executive mansion itself. The White House team was also very responsive to our stated concerns by showing, for example, that taking into account plantings in the tree line from the south, that the core public view of the iconic south facade of the executive mansion, the portico, the Truman balcony, etc., would remain largely unchanged and undiminished from crucial vantage points, and that the prominence of the north portico of the executive mansion was being preserved as well to the extent possible. And prior to this meeting, amended plans shown to us by the White House, in which we've now incorporated into the motion before us, further reflect the public comments and our feedback. The south ceremonial and largely non-functional staircase has been removed, reducing the footprint of the ballroom significantly and markedly improving sightlines. I would also note that since December, our commission staff has consistently emphasized to the White House team the need for an improved public pedestrian experience when visiting the area in and around the White House. It appears that those concerns have also been heard, as we now have plans submitted to us, which we will hear more about later today, for a new visitor's entrance to the White House. Since 1994, in the aftermath of the Oklahoma City bombing, the White House has steadily become, because of very real security concerns, more and more walled off from the general public by an expanding complex of unsightly security barriers and fencing. With the White House's visitor center submission, we are seeing the most significant, concerted, real efforts to restore public view sheds and improve the pedestrian experience around the White House in 3 decades. And I like to think that the NCPC has been part of the impetus for action on that front. After the formal presentations in March, commissioners had the opportunity to ask questions and comment, and we then heard public testimony for many hours. I want to emphasize that everyone who wanted to be heard on this project was heard. We did not require in-person testimony as we could have. We heard from folks all over the country, and even a presentation from a couple of well-meaning, if rather misguided, engineers from Venezuela who proposed a massive geodesic freedom dome on the South Lawn, which for the record I do not support. I commend so many members of this commission for sitting through the many hours of testimony and thoughtfully considering the testimony that we heard. I want to note that we would have been within our rights as a commission to immediately vote on the ballroom at that point. Indeed, we had a seconded motion on the floor at that time. Instead, we held that motion over to give us more time to properly consider the matter before us in light of the testimony and the materials that we had before us. I have now personally read every single comment submitted to this commission. That has not been a simple or a quick task, but as chairman, I thought it was my duty. I heard every minute of public testimony on this project. I've reviewed our staff's recommendations, and I've reviewed the project materials submitted to us at great length. I should note that many of the negative comments that were submitted to us during this process were frankly unresponsive. They dealt with issues beyond the scope of this commission. The private funding of the ballroom, for instance, or interior decorations, or the demolition process, or were simply opinions on the president himself. Considering issues of this sort is not within our mandate. We are not some sort of free-ranging ballroom justice commission. A great many of the negative comments we received were also copies or variations on a number of what I found to be unhelpful form letters circulated by groups that oppose the ballroom. While I always commend members of the public for engaging with civic processes, I would have preferred to hear unvarnished views as opposed to picked over uninformed language repeated hundreds or thousands of times. I took much more seriously the number of serious architectural critiques that we received. Some were from noted architects, others from simply interested members of the public who took the time to send us their thoughts and comments. And to those members of the public, I thank you, and I want to assure you that I considered your views before coming to my decision today. Today, I will be voting in favor of this project, and I want to explain why. In doing so, I hope my fellow commissioners will indulge me. I think it would be instructive to discuss the actual architectural history of the White House and the White House complex in order to properly contextualize the project that we have before us. And in doing so, I believe that I will address many of the public and architectural concerns that we've received during this process. In 1792, President George Washington and then Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson launched a design competition to design what was then called the President's House. The submission that won out was that of James Hoban. It was inspired, many say, by Leinster House in Dublin, one of the greatest examples of 18th century Georgian architecture in Ireland, with Palladian elements particularly prominent. Design and construction did not end with Hoban, though, by a very long shot. And indeed, if you look at the White House today, it bears very little resemblance to the original Hoban design. Jefferson, who had criticized the White House previously as big enough for, quote, 2 emperors, 1 pope, and the Grand Lama in the bargain, on taking office actually quickly saw a need for expansion. He added colonnades to house various service spaces that would otherwise have been in outbuildings, significantly expanding the original footprint of the White House. Shortly thereafter, of course, the building was substantially burned to the ground by the British during the War of 1812, for which I've still not forgiven them, requiring total reconstruction. And the building that was rebuilt thereafter quickly departed from the relatively simple original Hoban design. James Monroe added the south portico. Andrew Jackson, very controversially, as I alluded to before, added the north portico in 1830. These 2 imposing classical design elements were roundly criticized for their cost and extravagance in their day, but are now perhaps the defining architectural features of the White House. Sprouting up next to the White House, of course, a short while later was the imposing edifice of the Treasury Building. Growing from a relatively small classical structure begun in 1836 to the massive 4 wings that it encompasses today by 1869, the Treasury grew to dwarf in footprint and massing the White House that it sat beside. During the same time period, the continued viability of the White House as the presidential residence and seat of government was repeatedly called into question for many reasons, but including the fact that it just simply wasn't big enough. Both before and after the Civil War, there were numerous proposals to move or to substantially rebuild the White House, but none of these were pursued. What occurred instead was simply sprawl. The complex started growing in a largely disorganized and ad hoc fashion. On the west side of the White House, for instance, connected to the West Colonnade, massive greenhouses and conservatories grew and grew and grew, until indeed several decades later, by the turn of the 20th century, their footprint rivaled the Executive Mansion, dwarfing any comparable structures on the east side of the building short of the Treasury, and were considered a vital and historic part of the White House complex. Indeed, as a side point, those who speak today about the historical symmetry of the White House as it relates to the ballroom proposal are essentially speaking about a fictional history of the building, not present since the very earliest days of our republic. The White House complex as a whole has never been symmetrical, since perhaps the 1830s, if even then. And then whether it was the burgeoning Treasury Department to one side or the greenhouse facilities on the other, the White House complex in its first century grew in fits and spurts. and it has continued to do so until the present day. Beginning in 1871, rising just to the west of the conservatories and greenhouses, was a new massive addition to the complex. The State War and Navy building, now called the EEOB, dwarfs the White House, overtopping and literally overshadowing it. With little in the way of architectural coherence with the White House and Treasury, its Second Empire styling and design was roundly criticized. Mark Twain called it the ugliest building in America. Henry Adams called it an architectural insane asylum. Franklin Delano Roosevelt considered a near total redesign of its facade, as it was still reviled as an architectural atrocity in his time. Today, of course, views differ significantly, and most consider it to be quite beautiful, if somewhat discordant with the White House. By 1892, the White House complex was such a mess, and so clearly underbuilt given the demands of the presidency at that time, that Benjamin Harrison and his formidable wife Caroline proposed a total redesign of the complex, adding diagonal connectors on the east and west of the executive mansion, connecting to two massive halls on either side, equal in size to the executive mansion, that could contain office space, entertaining space, galleries for art and historical artifacts. This plan was never implemented, but it shows that certainly by 1892, the same arguments being made for the ballroom, the same needs being identified, were an issue for the presidency. Proceeding into the 20th century, we get Teddy Roosevelt, who demolished the half-century-old greenhouses and conservatories, drawing intense public ire in doing so, and threw up office space to the west of the West Colonnade, forming what is today the West Wing, or at least the roots of the West Wing. Roosevelt also built a small East Wing to serve as an entrance and cloakroom, which was later largely demolished in the 1940s before being rebuilt. The West Wing grew under Hoover, burned down, was rebuilt, and then FDR effectively tripled its size, adding 2 floors and what is now the Oval and Cabinet Suite to the south of the West Wing. FDR also added a swimming pool under the West Colonnade. Truman tore the entire White House interior down to its studs, substantially rebuilding it, and for good measure added the Truman balcony to the south facade, for which he was, of course, roundly condemned. Kennedy added the Situation Room complex, a large addition to the south of the West Wing. Nixon put a press room in where the swimming pool was, again drawing public condemnation. I could go on and on and on. My core point is that the White House is ever-changing, ever-evolving, to meet the programmatic needs of an ever-changing and evolving United States presidency. And any argument that relies on the idea that the White House is unchangeable, or should be unchangeable, flies in the face of the very history of the structure such critics claim they are trying to protect. And so we arrive at the latest project to be proposed as an addition to the White House, the ballroom to be built on the site of the old East Wing. Since at least the Harrison administration, and you could make the argument since the days of Andrew Jackson, there has been a recognized need for a large entertaining and event space on the White House complex. Modern presidents have accommodated this programmatic need for large events by erecting unsightly tents on the oft-swampy land of the South Lawn. Nobody can argue that this is a good idea or that it befits the presidency of the greatest and most powerful country that has ever existed in history. We've been told by the White House project team and by architect Shalom Baranas that they are looking to build a ballroom that can seat 1,000, while also accommodating the needs of the presidency: security, ingress, egress, room for various ceremonies, etc. We typically defer to applicants when they define their programmatic needs. That's as true for this project as it is for a parking garage or a cellular tower or any number of other projects that regularly come before this commission. But I will note that the Washington Hilton seats over twice as many in its ballroom. 1,000 is not an unreasonable number programmatically, and not an unreasonable amount of space, especially given that presumably many events to be held there might have fewer people, but require space for entertainment, a dais for speeches, room for displays, and require substantial space for visiting dignitaries. The proposed ceiling is high, but I would think that a ballroom for the president, and indeed for the United States, for the most important civic events in our country, befits a high ceiling. Some of the architectural critiques we received have focused on the kitchen, which is currently to be at ground level. Some have suggested that if the kitchen were moved underground, the entire height of the structure could be reduced significantly. We've also been told, however, by the project team that subterranean construction is simply not possible, owing to other programmatic needs below grade. And I want to speak very carefully here. The president has spoken publicly to an extent about what is being built below the ballroom. And for obvious reasons, I will not go further than he has on the subject. But I will note that there are sealed entries on the docket of the court case brought against the ballroom project by the National Trust. And I think it is therefore safe for the public and for this commission to assume that these subterranean programmatic needs are serious and unmovable, and as noted in public docket entries related to national security. It is, of course, also public record that FDR built an emergency bunker beneath the old East Wing, for which he was actually criticized at the time. Other critiques that we have received have emphasized personal animus towards President Trump, that he is simply building a ballroom for his own use. I will note, though, that even if the current construction timeline holds, as I expect it will, President Trump will get very limited use of this structure before the end of his term, and that the real beneficiaries will be future presidents of all political stripes and dispositions and their administrations, as well as, of course, the American people. The ballroom, as proposed, while large, fits neatly into the White House complex, nestled as it is between the Executive Mansion and the much larger Treasury building. It does not overtop and overshadow the Executive Mansion, as does the Eisenhower building. And its neoclassical architecture matches and complements the neoclassical elements of the Executive Mansion, in contrast again to the Eisenhower building with its Second Empire features. I've spoken at length about the history of the White House today. I've done so because perhaps the only constant in the history of the White House is that practically every change, every modification, every addition, and indeed every feature that we now celebrate as an iconic aspect of the White House was roundly and viciously condemned in its day. The critiques of the ballroom today are therefore oddly familiar to those of us who have studied the White House and its surroundings. Just as the north and south porticos, the West Wing, the Truman balcony, and every other aspect of the White House are now celebrated, I believe too, in time, the ballroom will be celebrated as a crucial and contributing aspect of the White House complex. And as I said previously, I intend to support it today. Commissioner Blair.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, how can I follow that? Now have a good history of the White House. I would just say, obviously, I think the team has worked very hard to make this a good and beautiful structure. I agree that the president will get very limited use. I think it's worth noting that the architect of this structure, who I think is here with us today, is a renowned architect that has contributed a lot to the city and region and has won countless awards for his work. I think his firm has received 250 or so awards over its 4 decades based on my research. And he can correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably more, including some of the most prestigious awards in architecture. He was one of the youngest fellows of the American Institute of Architects ever admitted, which is a standout of his record. And I won't go through all of the buildings in the area that they have participated in, but all of the top level awards you can win in architecture, pretty much he's won and his firm has won. And I think to treat this project as different or somehow not from the same lineage of art and artistic design, simply because there are some people who I think for clearly political reasons don't like the project, is a shame. And I think it is an unfair besmirching of the architect. Further, the president, who obviously has had a hand in this design, is a builder himself. And he too has won numerous architecture designs and architecture awards for buildings he has built over the years, as well as hospitality awards and many others. So I think that's worth noting because the purpose of the ballroom really blends the two things. It blends great architecture with great hospitality, which is something the president cares deeply about because it represents the American people. That's what the White House does. It's not his house. He is the current occupant, but it is the American people's house, and he feels that way. And as I've said in my comments previously, the goal of this is to be able to give the American people or visitors, the King of England will be here at the end of the month, and we will likely dine in tents. When the president was recently in the United Kingdom, they dined in Windsor Castle. It's a little bit different. And, we would say that it is not fitting of the presidency or the White House to have to invite the king of our oldest ally and perhaps most loyal ally to come and eat in tents on the White House lawn. They deserve a better experience. I think that the public comment was well heard, despite the obvious campaigns that were, I would say, unserious in their critiques of the architecture of the project itself and more political in nature. I think all of the real feedback has been well considered. I think that perhaps we'll hear some differences today, but I think it's been well considered. I think it's clear that the team that has been on this project cares about what this commission thinks and has worked hard with it, as well as any project that has happened certainly during my time here, as any other team has. And so with that, I think we should all support this project. I will certainly be supporting this project, and I will yield further comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Blair. Administrator Forrest.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, and our fellow commissioners. I think this project is absolutely appropriate and logical. We're all familiar with our president's constitutional roles, but our president is also the convener in chief of the United States and the most powerful in the world. Would we have done more with appropriately sized and framework space over the decades and centuries? I surely believe so. Until now, we've convened as we can, probably not convened as we should. That's world leaders, business leaders, athletic, scientific, technical. We've retained a notable, federally accomplished architect. We've sourced the capital 100% from private pay. The attention to detail, I think, seems exquisite. And we talk about an accelerated process. We all know things take as long as we let them. 97 days ago, when I was sworn in as the administrator of GSA, we launched Project 410. It's our North Star. It took 410 days to build the entirety of the Empire State Building. Things do take as long as we let them. I've every confidence this is going to be magnificent. We're going to wonder why we didn't do it earlier. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll also be supporting this with a firm yes.
Thank you, Administrator Forrest. Commissioner Dixon.
Mr. Chairman, I have no comments at this time. I'll pass.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Mendelson.
Thank you. So I'm going to start with a question, which I think is to Mr. Acosta. I received a note earlier today that some of the president's statements and renderings regarding the ballroom are not consistent with what we have before us today. I don't know if that's correct. Do you know? And is what we're voting on, is that what is binding or what the president has been speaking or describing?
Sure. So I can answer that, Chairman Mendelson. The motion that the chairman gave at the beginning regarding the addendum to the EDR that was circulated to commissioners and posted on our website yesterday incorporates the updated design that had been shared and that we received the information on that from the project architect and applicant team. And so what is with the amended motion, assuming the motion passes the commission today, it would be the updated plans that have been circulated that the commission is approving.
Regardless of public statements that might be somewhat different.
The
public statements by the president.
What is before the commission to be approved is the updated plans that were shared.
Okay.
That includes the removal of the southern staircase, which you previously criticized, sir, and the addition of the southwest switchbacks there.
Yes, no, I understand. I looked at it. I just wanted to understand clearly what the commission has before it. So I have a number of comments. I'm going to see if I can have these somewhat organized. The issue to me is not whether there should be a ballroom. And I think a lot of the comments here have been about whether there should be a ballroom. I don't think that's it. It's the design. And I don't think the issue is that, well, other changes to the White House have been criticized, and therefore the critiques here are not justified. I'm sure there have been a lot of other proposals for the White House that were in fact not adopted. What we have before us is this proposal, and whether this proposal is acceptable or the best it can be. I have previously spoken to the issue of time and consideration. I recognize that spending 2 years on a fence is an awful long time. And it does seem to me that it could happen more quickly. I'm looking at Administrator Force. On the other hand, we've had this for maybe 3 months. Our first discussion, I believe, was at the January meeting. And I think there's a lot of value to the iterative process. And we've not had that. I'm reminded of some testimony that was submitted. I'm going to paraphrase it. We don't have to choose between respecting our history for the American people and accommodating modern government's needs. In the case of the East Wing Modernization Project, we can do both. Doing both, however, requires time, and that we move deliberately, that we engage seriously with ideas offered by the tens of thousands of architects, planners, scholars, and patriotic citizens who've submitted comments. It is possible to build a 1,000-person ballroom that, unlike the plan currently under review, truly honors the iconic status, the primacy, and the historic significance of the People's House. Comments submitted show how this could be done. The resulting ballroom would be smaller, and it would hold 1,000 people for a seated dinner. It would be lower in height, and it would still accommodate the functions proposed in the current plan. It would respect the building's original architectural style, and by retaining the historic access along Pennsylvania Avenue between the Capitol and the White House, it would preserve the material representation of the symbolic connection between the legislative and executive branches in a nation committed to representative government and public accountability. This consultative process exists for a reason. To borrow words of U.S. Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch, words that U.S. Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch used to describe our legislative process, it enables us to tap the combined wisdom of many, not just that of a rushed process. So I had brought up, I think it was at the January or February meeting, concern about the demolition. It was pointed out that the NCPC's general counsel has said the NCPC does not have jurisdiction over reviewing demolition. I'm not going to argue that, but the fact that it was demolished atypically before plans were presented means that the process, the iterative process, was more fixed. I look at the EDR, I don't see any analysis of the square footage needs. I don't see any analysis of why the structure can't be lowered. We're told for security reasons, perhaps that's correct, but there's just no analysis. I think that we can have a ballroom. That, to me, that's not the issue. And I would also just note parenthetically that I think much of the criticism is because of who is the president. I don't think that's what's before, or I'll say that is not what is before us. But I do think that the height of the ballroom, when I asked that of the architect at the last meeting, I didn't get a persuasive answer that the height needed to be 40 feet. It could be 39, 38, 37, 36 feet. I didn't see the analysis of that. And to me, that's what is the issue here, is that this addition is, when I look at what was circulated yesterday, the addendum, I mean, it's just, I'm trying to be nice here. It's just too large. It's just too large. And if we can get the same program, but not as tall, not competing in height with the main structure, and a condensed footprint, we are better for that. I think of the visitor center at the Capitol. That's a huge addition. And when you stand on East Capitol Street and you look west at the Capitol, it's, to me, quite remarkable, the vista, the view of the Capitol, because all that was fit. That huge program, a lot of rooms, a lot of conference rooms, a lot of committee rooms, a lot of stuff. And it was done. And we've not, because this has been such a rushed process, we have not had the benefit of that iterative work. I will note the EDR talks about how, well, some of the impact of the scale and height will be mitigated by landscaping. That may be true, but to me, that is not, that's not the solution. It just isn't. Landscaping is important. Trees die, last I checked. Trees can be, or plantings can be moved around. To me, landscaping is great, but that is not a solution. I will add as well that I am concerned that there have been comments at our proceedings and in the public about other changes. And I've said this, I think I said this at our last meeting, I don't think we should be looking at the White House piecemeal. Today it's the ballroom. Tomorrow it could be there's some modifications to, I guess it's the colonnade between the main building and the West Wing. The day after that, it could be some addition to the West Wing. We should be looking at all of this at one time and not piecemeal. So that is a concern of mine as well. I think that the fact that this addendum to the EDR exists speaks to the value of the iterative process, that there have been changes made. I don't think they're enough. I think that if we had more time, and I can't help but wonder, but that the court action, the injunction, even though it's been stayed, would give us more time, that we would be able to see even better improvements that still protect the program. That's not the issue for me, but have a addition that is more compatible. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mendelson. Commissioner Henderson.
I have no comments at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Giacchetti.
I have no comments at this time either. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cozart. We don't have Commissioner Cozart with us. Apologies. Commissioner Solisas.
Thank you, Chairman. With the thorough work the NCPC staff has done and the improvements to the project I see today, and the important element that you made, Mr. Chairman, that the complex has to evolve. It has to evolve to meet the functioning of the administration and the White House. It's very important that it's able to do that and meet the mission requirements of the president and his staff. I think that's critical at the time too, to make sure that those things happen quickly. I think it will, as you point out, also will serve the leadership today and in the future. So with that, I support the project moving ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Stidham.
Thank you, Chairman. With that, I have a statement on behalf of Secretary Brigham. I would like to read. So good afternoon. I am providing the following statement on behalf of the Secretary of Interior, Doug Burgum, regarding the Commission's final vote on the East Wing Modernization Project. The Secretary recognizes and appreciates the substantial public testimony received on this proposal. The record reflects a wide range of perspectives, including comments emphasizing historic preservation values and the symbolic importance of the White House grounds, concerns about scale, massing, and visibility from key public viewpoints, concerns about impacts to the historic landscape composition and axial views, questions about process and transparency, and from some commenters, support for improvements framed as strengthening national pride and the civic character of the Capitol. Today, the Secretary is voting in support of the project. This vote reflects the Secretary's judgment that the final design, as presented for Commission action, advances an operational need for a permanent, secure venue to support official state functions and other responsibilities of the administration, while proceeding through the Commission's established review framework that considers design, site planning, and relationship to a historic setting. As the project moves into implementation, the Secretary emphasizes the importance of continued coordination and execution consistent with the approved final design, particularly the integrated relationship among architecture, landscape, lighting, access, and circulation, as well as site edge conditions, so that the built outcome is coherent, durable, and appropriate to its national significant civic landscape.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Argo.
Thank you. I think I will make this simple. I'd like to align myself with Bill. With Commissioner Mendelson comments. which I thought were thoughtful, on point, and raised issues that we should be concerned about before what may be a rush to approve something this significant. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chairman Levenbach.
Well, thank you. First, I want to commend the chairman for the fascinating walk through history. And I think it's important because, we work on public policy issues all the time, and a lot of times you evaluate it based on the circumstances of the moment. And it's important here to evaluate this through the arc of history. And so I thought that was very important context for us. So I want to say a couple of things. One is that I appreciate the level of public interest in this proposal. The White House belongs to the American people, and it's appropriate that changes to the grounds receive careful scrutiny from this commission. But before I turn to the proposal itself, I want to briefly just note the perspective that I bring to the discussion. So I started working in the Executive Office of the President in 2007 when I joined the White House Office of Management and Budget. So my office was in the new Executive Office building, which is across the street from the White House. I have now served in the Executive Office of the President for 3 presidencies. And so I have a lot of familiarity with that corner of town. And during those years, I've attended many events at the White House, holiday receptions, meetings. I've provided countless tours for friends and family. And most recently, I attended the Hanukkah reception. I discussed the crowding in my earlier remarks before this commission. And that brings me to the proposal before us. So our responsibility is to ensure that the White House campus can support the modern presidency while still respecting the history of the place. And it's clear from all my experiences at the White House that it is not suited to accommodate the large numbers of guests that are indoors. The building is extraordinary, but its ceremonial spaces were designed for a much smaller scale of events than the presidency hosts today. The gatherings are often held, as many people have discussed, under temporary structures on the South Lawn, and those events require generators, staging infrastructure, catering operations, portable restroom facilities for the guests, and these installations must be assembled, secured, removed repeatedly, often with damage to the grounds. The presidency has a ballroom. The only question is whether we continue building it temporarily each time, or do we do it once properly? I listened carefully to the public's concerns about the size of the modernized East Wing, and I think the critics failed to account for 2 important aspects. So first, the White House complex sits atop an extensive network of underground infrastructure and secure facilities that support the operations of the presidency. And those constraints can significantly limit where new construction can realistically occur and shape both the placement and the ability to develop below grade. So portions of the West Wing were able to be constructed below grade. I believe some parts are even 1 story below grade. I appreciate the comment about the Capitol Visitor Center. Much of that's below grade. That type of excavation just is not capable, cannot be done in this particular location. Second, although the project is commonly referred to as a ballroom, it is actually a multi-purpose facility. The building will include space for the office of the First Lady. It will include a theater. Of course, it's got the food preparation and other necessary support for events. It also contains continuity of operations for the president that were recently highlighted. And so my reaction to the proposal is the same today as when it was originally briefed, is that this structure will vastly improve the utility of the White House compound. So I want to talk just a moment about architecture. So Thomas Jefferson was not only a president, he was one of the most thoughtful architectural minds of the founding generation. And when he served as Minister of France, he studied classical buildings and concluded that the architecture of public institutions should reflect the dignity of the Republic. So when the state of Virginia built its capital in Richmond, Jefferson rejected ordinary government designs of the time and instead modeled the structure after Maison Carrée in Nîmes, which is a Roman temple that he admired. And his belief was simple. The institutions of a great republic should be housed in buildings that convey permanence, beauty, and civic confidence. And this is not an expansion for its own sake. It is a consolidation of functions that are already occurring, but inefficiently. And if we are going to add a building to the White House grounds, it should not simply solve a logistical problem. It should also be worthy of the setting. And this proposal does both. That addresses a real operational need while contributing a building that is dignified, harmonious with its surroundings, and worthy of the White House campus and the American people. And for those reasons, I support moving forward with it.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Levenbach. Madam Secretary, can you please confirm the motion in the second and then take the vote by roll call? Yes, Commissioner.
Pass for a moment.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to discussion.
Absolutely, sir.
First, I would want to thank all the comments that were made. Particularly, I want to focus on my chairman, Mendelson's comments. I also am impressed with what you presented to us also, Mr. Chairman. You and I have had some dialogue about this issue for several weeks now. I, like you, have taken the time to look at and try to review all the comments, as many as I could at least, of the 39,000 we received. And clearly they have a leaning, and your evaluation was valid. And I appreciate that evaluation of them. I also want to associate myself with the comments of my other colleagues here. Obviously, they were well prepared, and the word should go back to President Trump that they represented him well, and they made very persuasive presentations as would be expected. I've got three choices. I can vote no, I can vote yes, or I may want to take another position, which I've been encouraged to do and thought about doing, is to basically pass this at this time. Rather than, as you and I discussed earlier, my vote to maybe say, no, I told you that a long time ago and gave you a document to support it, which I'm holding in my hand now, which I will keep for reference later. But at this point, I'd like to just suggest that I support a lot of the dialogue here. And we're going to move forward, I think. Whatever I do, it's going to go forward. And hopefully we will always tell people, to the victors go the spoils. So if whoever's victorious in the future will be able to enjoy this building. And maybe some of us will be at the building enjoying it and looking back and say how it got to be what it is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do any other commissioners wish to be heard at this time? Hearing and seeing none, at this point, Madam Secretary, could you please confirm the motion in the second and then take the vote by roll call?
Yes, the original motion was made by Commissioner Dixon and amended by Chairman Scharf. The original motion was seconded by Commissioner Schaefer and seconded as amended by Vice Chairman Levenbach. With that, Commissioner Solisas, Commissioner Stidham,
Yes.
Commissioner Argo,
Present?
Vice Chairman Levenbach,
Yes.
Chairman Scharf,
Yes.
Commissioner Blair,
Yes.
Administrator Forst,
Yes.
Commissioner Dixon,
Present.
Chairman Mendelson,
No.
Commissioner Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Giacchetti.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. With that, we'll move on to agenda item 8, which is the consent calendar. There is one item on this month's consent calendar. I see that our friends from the press don't want to stick around for the Arabian leopard exhibit. I'm very disappointed to see that, but understand, obviously. The only consent calendar item for approval is to approve comments on the draft area development plan and transportation management plan updates for the Naval Support Facility Suitland. Are there any questions or discussions on the consent calendar item from commissioners? Hearing and seeing none, we have a motion on the floor to approve the consent calendar. Do we have a second?
Second.
With a motion and a second, is there any desire to discuss this item? Hearing and seeing none, Madam Secretary, can you please confirm the motion and second and then take the vote by roll call?
Yes, the motion was made by Commissioner Dixon and seconded by Commissioner Blair. Commissioner Solisas,
Yes.
Commissioner Stidham,
Yes.
Commissioner Argo,
Present?
Vice Chairman Levenbach,
Yes.
Chairman Scharf,
Yes.
Commissioner Blair,
Yes.
Administrator Forst,
Yes.
Commissioner Dixon,
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Giacchetti.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We have 6 items on our open session calendar for today. Agenda item 9A is a request to approve preliminary site and building plans for the new stadium at RFK campus. And I believe we have Laura Shipman, who's going to be presenting for NCPC.
Good afternoon, Chairman Scharf and Commissioners. The District of Columbia's RFK Stadium Project Management Office, in partnership with the Washington Commanders, has submitted preliminary plans for a proposed new stadium and surrounding site improvements on the RFK Stadium campus located in Washington, D.C. At the preliminary review stage, the Commission is focused on whether the applicant addressed the comments made during concept review, general consistency with a comprehensive plan, and a range of building and site design topics, including view sheds, massing, landscape, circulation, and programming. As a reminder, the stadium site is in a prominent location positioned on axis with the U.S. Capitol and East Capitol Street near the banks of the Anacostia River. We will begin with the stadium and site design. At concept review in February, the Commission was generally supportive of the conceptual design approach, providing several recommendations and requests for additional information to ensure the appropriateness of the design for the site. The applicant has been quite responsive to those comments. At our last review, the Commission requested an elevation and height comparison with the U.S. Capitol and Washington Monument. On this slide, the true height comparison is diagrammed on the top, with the height of the Capitol at 288 feet and the stadium dome reaching 195 feet. The elevation above sea level comparison is on the bottom, showing the significant elevation change between the Capitol building and proposed stadium. I will also note that the district zoning administrator made the final determination that the project conforms with the Height of Buildings Act. As requested by the Commission, the applicant provided a rendering confirming the stadium roof form will maintain a view of the U.S. Capitol building dome and Washington Monument beyond, along the East Capitol Street axis from the Anacostia Hills. This is the previous west elevation from the February concept submission. And here is the current proposal. In particular, the columns and entry archway have been refined in the latest iteration. At concept review, the Commission requested further information regarding the proposed column spacing and recommended refinements to the column design to reflect historical precedents. In reference to classical fluted columns, 8 flutes are articulated at the base of each of the stadium's columns, blending into a solid roof support, symbolizing the 8 wards of the district united into one. The proposed column spacing every 26 feet on center is required structurally to support the stadium roof. The preliminary submission responds to site design recommendations by the Commission regarding formal design and landscape buffers. The Festival Plaza, West, and East plazas have a balanced and nearly symmetrical design that integrates elements such as an array of trees, grand stairways, and an elevated landscape podium to emphasize the axial relationships along the East Capitol Street view corridor and reference the formal landscapes of the monumental core. This aerial view of the stadium from the west, overlooking the Festival Plaza, illustrates the site design emphasis on reinforcing the east-west axis. Additionally, as recommended, the landscape design introduces wide planted areas to buffer from the adjacent high-traffic roadways to enhance the experience of the vegetated plazas at the north, south, and east entries to the stadium. This is an aerial view showing the East Plaza and landscape buffering from adjacent roadways. The Commission also requested the applicant provide information on related RFK campus project components outside the site boundaries that will be implemented at the time of stadium opening, so that the project could be evaluated as a whole. The parking garages shown on this overall axon will be developed independently from the stadium and will be separate submissions in the future. However, their general massing is shown in several of the following renderings of the stadium. The heights will be up to 110 feet. Also, the primary truck loading entry, a tunnel under the stadium grounds, is shown to the north of the stadium. Now I will walk through several of the requested views of the stadium from eye level. Here is a view of the approach from the east along the Whitney Young Memorial Bridge, a view from the northwest from the Kingman Park neighborhood, from the Anacostia River, from the Hill East neighborhood with the DC Armory in the foreground, and a view of the north entry to the stadium. The monumental scale of the stadium is appropriate for its location and use. However, on the north and south entries, the podium lowers to the ground, and the full and potentially imposing height of the colonnades can be experienced at these locations. Staff recommends the Commission encourage the applicant to continue to refine the north and south entries, which open to the surrounding neighborhoods, to ensure they are inviting and appropriately scaled within the context of the monumental design. And now I will walk through the requested views of the pedestrian arrival experience on game day. This shows the route from the Metro through Festival Plaza, another through the North Pedestrian Tunnel, and west of the stadium near the podium shops. At concept review, the Commission requested additional information on the proposed building program at street level and how these spaces will be designed to help activate the public realm. The applicant notes the building program may include a flagship retail team store, a museum, and food and beverage opportunities for year-round use. The open spaces around the stadium are also intended to be used outside of game days. This is a view of the Festival Plaza on a normal non-event day, and the West Plaza entry on a normal day, showing the shaded and vegetated ramps, seating, and stairs. The comprehensive plan visitors and commemoration element encourages projects to ensure accessibility to visitor attractions for all users, along with well-designed and coordinated signage and wayfinding tools. Staff recommends the Commission request the applicant provide the universally accessible circulation routes throughout the site, as well as the wayfinding and signage approach with the final submission. The applicant notes the stadium lighting will create a softly glowing lantern-like appearance with appropriately dim lighting to respect the hierarchy of memorials, monuments, and the Capitol building. To confirm alignment with comprehensive plan policies, staff recommends the Commission request the applicant submit the proposed exterior lighting levels in comparison to the U.S. Capitol building and Washington Monument, and the type, locations, size, and design of planned stadium exterior graphics, such as significant signage, display screens, and projections. Perimeter security will include temporary crowd control elements such as retractable bollards and fencing. Permanent vehicle barriers and pedestrian security barriers will also be integrated into the site. Staff recommends the Commission request additional location information and design details in the final submission for the permanent perimeter security elements such as bollards and barriers. As the design is developed, the form and materials of the permanent perimeter security elements should complement the architectural and landscape character of the stadium grounds as guided by urban design element policy. The preliminary submission includes additional information regarding tree preservation and replacement. According to the applicant, most of the existing trees on site are in poor or declining condition, and these compromised trees will be removed with the exception of the alley of healthy trees west of the stadium in the Festival Plaza and north of the stadium along C Street Northeast. 2 large elm trees, which are heritage trees, will be relocated within the Festival Plaza. The applicant plans to meet the district's project requirements regarding tree preservation and replacement, and to generally conform with the intent of policies in the Comprehensive Plan Federal Environment element. As recommended by the Commission, the general planting palette includes species native to the region and select species supportive of pollinators in accordance with policies in the Federal Environment element. Remaining site design information requested for final submission includes further details on planned stormwater management facilities that will be visible to the public and kiosks and pavilions proposed around the stadium grounds. And now we will focus on the additional information provided regarding circulation and parking. As noted in the last review, the existing pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure surrounding the stadium will be improved and expanded to encourage active modes. Public transportation improvements, either planned or currently being studied, include improved access to and capacity at the Stadium Armory Metro Rail Station and enhanced bus service or bus rapid transit. The applicant notes that the site plan does not preclude a second Metro Rail station if provided by WMATA in the future, though the plan is not dependent on this second station to manage capacity. Transportation demand management measures are also being explored to encourage staggered arrivals and departures and the use of alternative modes of transportation. In terms of street network at stadium opening, the existing curvilinear high-speed roadway network is planned to be replaced with an urban grid of two-way streets shown in green. The aim is for roadways to have sidewalks with buffers and planter zones to improve pedestrian connectivity where feasible. A secondary network of streets shown in blue serves the parking garages and service parking lots to foster efficient ingress and egress. On game days, there will be special traffic operations. Closures around the festival plaza will allow for pedestrians to walk straight from the metro into the stadium without crossing a roadway. Drivers will be routed to use high-capacity links to nearby highways, and there will be barriers to cut through traffic into the neighborhoods. This slide shows the locations of the proposed garages mentioned earlier and surface parking, which are outside the stadium site under current commission review. Overall, there will be up to 8,000 parking spaces, with 75% in garages and 25% in surface lots on opening day. While these garages will be surrounded by development at full build-out, they will be highly visible in the early phases of the campus redevelopment project. Therefore, as part of any future parking garage submission, the applicant should evaluate alternative orientations for the G1 and G2 garages to reduce visual impacts of views to the stadium and from adjacent neighborhoods. Lower garage heights, particularly for the G2 garage near the Kingman Park neighborhood, and/or phasing of garage upper floors as surrounding surface lots are developed, and active uses lining the ground floors of the garages to improve the pedestrian experience and create opportunities for community-serving uses. This shows the proposed loading routes. As noted at the commission meeting, loading and service areas often create a utilitarian side to buildings, which would be difficult to disguise in a prominent stadium that is viewed from all angles. The proposal aims to address this issue by locating the primary loading dock ingress and egress through a north tunnel under the stadium grounds, shown with a red arrow, avoiding service entry impacts to the design of the stadium building. However, to also prevent visual impacts of the loading entry on the experience of the stadium landscape, staff recommends screening the loading tunnel entry from pedestrian pathways and seating areas with vegetation. And finally, in terms of coordination, the applicant conducted additional community open houses last week and is continuing ongoing coordination with the federal stakeholders, including NPS and the DC National Guard Armory. As the stadium project is developed, staff supports the continuation of the district's robust outreach efforts and recommends further analysis and mitigation of potential event noise and nuisance impacts on surrounding neighborhoods. With that, staff recommends the commission approve preliminary plans for a proposed new stadium and surrounding site improvements on the RFK Memorial Stadium campus, with the comments highlighted throughout my presentation and listed on the following slides. And that concludes my presentation. Members of the applicant team from the district, commanders, and design firm HKS are also available to respond to any questions from the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Do members of the design team wish to be heard, or are they just available?
They're just available to answer questions.
Okay. In that case, do any commissioners have questions for Laura or for the applicant team at this time? Yes, ma'am.
Could you correct it? I think it's slide 33. And I think this is more for the applicant team. But you may also be able to answer this. So I gather from the slide, this is day one operation, right? The stadium is constructed, there's surface parking. Are these parking decks installed? Are they there on day one?
Yes, that's what is proposed here, but the applicant has additional information.
Executive, and I'm joined today by Mike Dry, HKS Architects, they're the design architect, he may need to come up to answer some of these questions. Those two garages will be there on day one.
So help me understand why we're not seeing the development of those with the stadium package, because they don't have independent utility. They would not be there if you were not building a stadium. And I think I had asked this before and recommended that when you came back, that the parking garages, some development of them be shown.
Yeah, Mike, are you able to respond to that in terms of timing? Thank you.
Sure. As you may be aware, the master plan is occurring around the district currently. So those parking garages, we've looked at them from a sizing standpoint and where they generally need to go. We've studied them very closely in terms of how in and get out of the complex to be supportive of the overall master planning process. We have not looked at the design of those. They're preparing an RFP for those to design the actual parking garages currently. One of the biggest things that we looked at is where to put them to deconflict them with people, try to keep them as away from people as much as possible. So that's the level that we've looked at it. Really just the fluidity of getting cars in and out, keeping them away from people, minimizing conflicts. Worked with DDOT, on that development as much as we could.
I get the locating and I get the master plan, but this is really outside the master plan because the master plan is not going to be looking at the stadium, right? So I'm a bit concerned that you're moving forward. I'm not quibbling about the location, but it's part and parcel of the stadium. So we should be seeing it as a complex and understanding how those frame the complex, because they do frame it. They're in their locations. So it would be great if when you came back, you gave us a bit more information on those so that we could understand how they fit into the overall design of the stadium. Because it does, looking at it from that 360 view, these two are in the way and they're part of that view, and understanding how they affect that view and how their design coordinates with the stadium is really important in approval of the stadium. Thank you.
I would just echo what Commissioner Stidham said. I think particularly the G1 parking facility affects important view sheds. And I mean, the stadium looks beautiful right now. But as I've said previously at NCPC meetings, I have rarely, if ever, seen a beautiful parking facility. So I think understanding how that affects the overall project plan and what the stadium will actually look like to people once it's complete, I think it's really important. So thanks for raising that, Tammy.
Understood, Chairman.
Do we have any other questions either for Laura or for the project team at this time?
I have one. So everyone that I've shown the renderings to loves it. Even for Passover dinner last night, everybody liked it. But there was one question that came up I thought was interesting. So I want to go back to the parking again, because walk me through your thinking around the parking, and specifically you have two surface lots right by a plaza. So I'm thinking that you had an opportunity to do different things with that space. You have this great plaza where people will be able to hang out. Why did you decide to put surface parking to the right of that?
Surface parking to the right.
To the right. You have two lots. You have two lots on the right side of that map. Like, sort of walk me through because you have public transport here. The roads are more running by G1 and G2. Tell me what you're thinking about that.
Yeah, ultimately, I believe the master plan envisions a very active pathway there, so that as people are coming off of the metro, we expect somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60% of patrons who visit the stadium to come from that direction. So the goal, I believe, of the master plan was to really enliven that direction up by the Festival Plaza, to have active retail, things of that nature from that direction. When we look at the cars and how they get into the site, really focusing on getting people into the parking deck, out of their cars as fast as they can, and getting them onto their feet. So we're not deconflicting. That was the large kind of focus on
the two surface lots you have right there. Is that supporting like retail and other things that we don't necessarily see, or like what with all the ways to get to this place? You could have had something else there, like, expand the plaza or do something else with the space. Why did you put two surface lots there?
Is it possible for me to speak? Sorry, Commission. My camera is not working, but this is Andy Van Horn, head of real estate for the Commanders. Those two lots exist today, and they are being reused from previous RFK Stadium. We will replace those with a mixed-use development environment, including live entertainment, bars, restaurants, apartments, and hotels. So those are temporary, and having been historically there, we were reusing them, and then we replaced them with, a very active entertainment district.
And so after those are redeveloped, the only real tailgating spot, I'm just planning for myself for the future, would be to the southwest. Is that correct?
It is envisioned that we will also build housing and hotels there, but we have heard very much from our fans and others that we should continue to find surface parking spaces for tailgating and other, kind of traditional uses like that. So we are exploring that as well as the mixed use environment that will wrap the G1 garage. And I apologize for my camera not working.
No, thank you, regardless of the camera issue. Are there any other commissioners that have questions either for Laura or for the project team at this time?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate as the defender of the Capitol here, the applicants coming back with the elevation views that we asked for previously. I think that slide was particularly helpful, and the additional column detail. I appreciate that. I think for future submissions, it would also be useful, at least for me, to see rendered views from probably the Lincoln Memorial and potentially Arlington Cemetery viewpoints, just to take the stadium in context. It looks like it will probably be predominantly hidden by the Capitol building, but I'd like to see what that looks like, a little more than my back of the envelope math.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioners at this time? We have two individuals who have signed up to speak to members of the public. The first is Fraser Walton, who's representing the Kingman Park Civic Association. Is Mr. Walton with us?
Mr. Chairman, we don't have Mr. Walton at this point. If we could start with Mr. Flanagan,
Okay.
and we'll see if Mr. Walton joins in time.
Neil Flanagan, who is speaking in a personal capacity. Mr. Flanagan, you have 3 minutes to provide your testimony. Please proceed when you are ready.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Commissioners, I encourage the Commission to approve the preliminary site and building plans for this project because of the important precedent it will set in regard to the Height of Buildings Act of 1910. In particular, since the law's amendment in 2014, the Zoning Commission and the Zoning Administrator have adhered to a literal reading of subsection H of the law at the expense of architectural creativity. In endorsing the colloquial definition of the word dome proffered by the applicant, this commission will open the door to a new era of rooftop variety and hopefully precipitate the revision of this obsolete law. I ask the commissioners to refer to my written comments for significantly more in-depth and technical analysis than is possible in 3 minutes. But to summarize, if the zoning administrator's determination were challenged in court, I am skeptical that a judge would find their argument persuasive. The striking lightweight roof proposed is not a dome in a structural sense. It is instead a hyperbolic paraboloid or hypar. As the applicant admits, a hypar's mechanism of balance is one of balancing loads, but balancing loads is fundamentally different from a dome. In a nutshell, a dome is a way of spanning space by balancing compression loads against each other, and the hypar is a way of balancing tension loads against each other to cover a space. These lead to profoundly different geometries, as you can see in the renderings, particularly with where the high point of the structure is located. Historically, the Zoning Commission and the Zoning Administrator have rejected colloquial interpretations of the word dome, and I particularly point to Zoning Case 0813. The Zoning Administrator invokes Merriam-Webster's dictionary to permit a loose interpretation of the word dome, but a court may find this argument unpersuasive. The DC zoning regulations do refer all undefined words to Webster's unabridged dictionary but for the purposes of zoning decisions. However, the question of conformance with the Height Act of 1910 is not a zoning question, and the delegation to the mayor is not through the same law as the zoning regulations are promulgated. The Commission and any courts may be asked to review its decision-making must instead consider whether the text of the law treats the word dome as a term of art within the architecture and engineering fields. Approval of this project, if it is not overturned in court, would dramatically widen the range of what is permitted to be constructed on the roofs of buildings, including structures shaped like human heads or large pyramids, both of which definitions are provided for the words dome and spire. I think all of DC should welcome this change, and I believe this is a healthy endorsement of DC's autonomy in the face of increasing federal intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flanagan. Is Mr. Walton now with us?
No.
Do any members of the commission have any questions? I guess that's then just for Mr. Flanagan. Looks like he may have already left us. Hearing none, that concludes public testimony for today. Thank you for being here, sir. That was, as a fan of the Height of Buildings Act and its storied history, that was quite fascinating. And with that, is there a motion to approve preliminary site and building plans for the new stadium at RFK campus?
So moved.
Hearing a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, commissioners. I'll now open it up to the commission for discussion, and I will start deliberations with Commissioner Cozart.
Good afternoon. Really appreciate, as always, the work of our staff around this project. It has continued to be a collaboration with the district and our federal partners. Really appreciate the movement forward and all the efforts of the Park Service as we've moved forward with our work. We've had some really good meetings related to the master plan in the past couple of weeks. A lot of great comments about the integration of the surrounding campus with the stadium and the plans for the stadium and associated uses. And so a lot of good progress and momentum moving forward. The one thing that I would say about the master plan is that the kind of ideas behind kind of boundaries are ones for us to keep in mind, really understanding that while parts of the campus are going to move forward more quickly than other parts, they are all related to one another, and we've enjoyed a collaborative effort as Director Hanlon has shared with the team as we think about the master plan and moving forward. That collaborative effort certainly extends to the broader community as well, and also district agency partners. So just really pleased about the milestone and moving forward that we have today in front of us as a commission, and also appreciate the comments of fellow commissioners to refine this work, and note that we're taking notes on any of the design ideas that come out of this that can influence the broader master plan for the entire campus.
Excuse me. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Solisas?
Getting ready for the meeting. That was the first time I've seen it. The presentation was great, really impressive. I hope it brings more wins to the commanders.
A notion I'm sure that is echoed by all the members of this commission. Commissioner Stidham.
I truly second that.
Thank you.
I wished it for the hockey team in their improvements to their structure. It's not seen fruition yet, but maybe, yes, maybe soon. Minus the parking structures and my comments there, I have to say you've taken a very thoughtful approach to the setting of the stadium, and you've thought about it more than just on game day, which I think in the city where open space is very lacking and in great need everywhere, that you are really considered how that landscape can be used outside of a game day. And I think that's important to this community. I think it's important to the community that uses the fields that will stay, and everyone on that side of the city and throughout the. So I commend you for thinking about it holistically in that manner. The design is exquisite. You have taken into effect the necessary height, the necessary scale, umbrage to the previous stadium, while making it larger, which has been, I think, an idea since before the 1990s, frankly. A while. Yeah, it's a while, quite a while. So it just, you've done a great job. Please roll in those parking garages in a way that improves even more than you already have. And that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Arga.
Which I look to, I don't
Have much to add beyond that, other than being really impressed with where we are now, and I'd like to align with my fellow commissioners' comments. For John. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chairman Levenbach.
I've shown the renderings to so many people that I've been talking to, and every single person loves it. So to go from a project that did not have unanimity to one that does causes a little bit of whiplash. But with that said, I appreciate all the thought, and I know you've worked well with the staff, and so thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Commissioner Blair.
I think I would just say that everyone's very excited about this project, and I agree it's very well done, and look forward to seeing it proceed to the next phase.
Thank you, Commissioner. Administrator Forrest.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm just so excited about the evolution of the project and how people are working together. I have to say, I'll shout out Commissioner Stidham and others who asked about the parking and G1 and G2. I would just say, had we not asked some of those questions, I might not have learned about some mixed use opportunities and what you're looking to do. And would just suggest in that fullness of transparency as you evolve the project that that's just volunteered and brought to our attention, so we can share some of the thoughts and the excitement behind that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. Commissioner Dixon.
First, I want to associate myself with the planning director's comments, but I would say that I'm excited. I'll be more excited if I get a chance to go into the stadium. I haven't been to one in about 20 years in many stadiums, but that's another discussion. And I'm glad to see it coming forward, and hopefully those who do go will enjoy it, I think.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cash.
I'm just going to reiterate all the great design work on the stadium itself, but I also really want to underscore the need to see these garages as part of the package. So, I mean, I see these stadium renderings and I'm loving them. And then all of a sudden we see the view from the East Capitol Bridge and Whitney Bridge. And you have that. I'm reminded when we talked about Pennsylvania Avenue, it's this wide vista and we don't want anything obstructing anything. It's our view from the Capitol, and you have like this gray box on the side that you just see there. And in the winter, it's going to be even more visible. So I really think that we need to see what the box is going to look like. Remember that the Height of Buildings Act is a limit, not a ceiling, and see what we can do to make those parking garages better. So I'll disagree. I think there are some garages, if you look, you can be creative enough. Anyone that's been to National Airport, if you have to have a garage that looks okay, let's hang a bunch of plants on the side of it and make it look like it's not just a big utilitarian mess. So I think that we have an opportunity here where we have a stadium that's really panning out to be beautiful when a lot of people didn't think we could do what we're doing there on the site. And let's see if we can make the garages maybe do the same, because there is going to be a need for that. There's going to be a lot of people. We don't have new metro station there. Let's do what we can with the garages and make it kind of a forethought instead of an afterthought, because they're going to stay there, and let's make them look good if we can, since they're going to be there for the life of the project. So, but again, thanks to the design team on the stadium itself. I think that things are moving along great. So thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Henderson.
Just echo the same comments about the garages, particularly G1, and have nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Giacchetti.
No comments other than to say I am supportive of the plans, and I'm looking forward to this project moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I prepared a 40-minute speech on the history of the RFK Stadium campus, but fearing for my chairmanship, I'll withhold that for now, although I'm happy to provide it offline. I think the thoughtfulness of this project is apparent to all of us. I share Commissioner Stidham's concerns with what parking facilities are going to look like on day one. At our last meeting, Commissioner Cash also made some insightful comments about particularly truck egress, what the service entrance is going to look like. We have what appears to be a pretty good solution to that problem based on the current renderings and design. And I look forward to seeing how that aspect of this develops as we move towards final approval. Overall, as I've said previously, I think stadiums and arenas hold a very important place in the urban landscape. I think that's been true historically. I think it's certainly true today. And I'm looking forward to seeing this stadium continue to come through to fruition. I like the colonnade a lot. I'd like to see more on the lighting plan, particularly on when the stadium both is in use and not in use. But other than that, I enthusiastically support bringing this through for preliminary approval today. And as always, I'd like to thank Laura, our team here at NCPC, and also the project team and HKS for their attention to this project, and that's really all I have to say. Are there any further comments or questions on this project?
Mr. Chairman, the witness who was not able to make it has just joined. If you are open to hearing from him.
I think we should do that. Mr. Walton, can you hear me? And to remind those watching, Fraser Walton.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, sir. And my understanding is that you're representing the Kingman Park Civic Association, and we will give you 5 minutes to present your testimony. Please proceed
Yes, sir.
whenever you're ready. Mr. Walton?
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. My name is Fraser Walton, and I'm with the Kingman Park Civic Association, which is directly. Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you, sir.
Okay. And can you still hear me? Okay.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, I've had a problem. I've been here since the beginning, but I'm sorry about that. But just to briefly, yes, sir. Just to briefly. But I just wanted to say that as a historic district, the neighborhood sits adjacent to the stadium. We've been here for the last 98 years, and we are clear.
Yeah, he's got his YouTube up.
So we can hear you loud and clear. I think you may have a YouTube video playing, or you may be watching the commission, and there may be a few seconds delay. If you just mute that and talk, I promise you we can hear exactly what you're saying. I hope that was the right advice.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I'm trying to find out what the problem is here. But at any rate, just to quickly, I don't want to hold you up. We clearly oppose. We strongly supported the construction of the stadium. However, we oppose the construction of a parking garage. The construction of a parking garage. And we oppose them because of the proximity to the neighborhood. Years ago, we had the highest rate of cancer in the city. And that was due to the fact of the parking at RFK Stadium. And what we're suggesting is that we have an alternative, and the alternative would be that you not build these massive parking garages, multi-level garages, and that we focus on increasing the size of the Stadium Armory Metro site. And we also suggest that we build a new subway stop at Oklahoma and Bennings Road within the next 5 to 7 years. We are very concerned. I've submitted our statement. And we have thousands of children, schools nearby, the playground, the golf course. The traffic would be terrific along there with these games as they were for the last 60 years. So 295 and 395 and the Wilson Bridge would be overwhelmed with traffic. So for that reason, I'm sorry about the echo, but so but we will. I thank you for allowing us to speak. We will continue to participate in trying to fight the construction. We worked with the Navy for many years, the U.S. Navy. The U.S. government, the district government, and environmentalists like Earth Justice, many of the organizations, the Anacostia Watershed Society, to clean the Anacostia River. We just had a terrible problem with water. And so for that reason, I would ask you to think about it. And I appreciate the sincere interest each one of you all have shown in this garage problem, because it is truly a problem and it throws off the scale.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Walton. Do any commissioners present have any questions for Mr. Walton or further comments on this project? Hearing none, can the secretary please confirm the motion and the second?
Yes, the motion was made by Commissioner Dixon and seconded by Commissioner Blair. Commissioner Cozart?
Yes.
Commissioner Slulisis?
Yes.
Commissioner Stidham?
Yes.
Commissioner Argo?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Levenbach?
Yes.
Chairman Scharf?
Yes.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Administrator Forst?
Yes.
Commissioner Dixon?
Yes.
Commissioner Cash?
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Giacchetti?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We'll now move on to agenda item 9B, which is a request to approve comments on design concepts for the new plan for Pennsylvania Avenue. Pennsylvania Avenue is obviously one of the most important connectors within this city. It's bordered essentially on all sides by highly relevant historical structures, obviously core elements of our capital. I think it's very important, particularly as we move further into America 250, with all the events coming in the months and years ahead, that we have a plan in place to make Pennsylvania Avenue what it could be, which is truly one of the iconic roads, iconic streets in the entire United States. At the February meeting, we looked at this project, or I guess a previous iteration of this project. The project partners leadership are actively discussing a more efficient management structure that will oversee construction, long-term maintenance operation, and funding as well to address the needs of the avenue so that it will serve the American people hopefully well into the future. And with that, we have Karen Shearhold from our team to present with us today. Karen, would you like to proceed?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Scharf and Commissioners. The National Capital Planning Commission, on behalf of the Pennsylvania Avenue Project Partners, requests the Commission's comments on design concepts for a new plan for Pennsylvania Avenue. Commission public feedback this month will help refine the designs considered for future analysis. In February, as you mentioned, the Commission heard an information presentation on the project background. I'll start by recapping some of the key points. NCPC is leading the Pennsylvania Avenue Project Partnership, which I'll refer to as the Partners or Partnership. That includes the 6 federal and local agencies shown here, with the U.S. Commission of Fine Arts as an advisor. The partners are working together to prepare a new plan for Pennsylvania Avenue. The project area is shown in the solid red outline. It focuses on the corridor, a 1.2-mile segment of Pennsylvania Avenue between the White House and the U.S. Capitol, and the 40 acres of adjacent public space and major north-south connections between the National Mall and downtown. The avenue and its immediate area are a National Historic Site, home to many historically significant buildings, statues, memorials, parks, and landscape features. The new plan will have two components, each led by a consultant team. The focus of today's meeting is on the public space plan, which will provide a design framework and guidance for the corridor and three main public space areas and address infrastructure modernization. Today, we'll share design concepts that will be further developed and included in the public space plan. Concurrent with the design work, the project team is working with partner agency leadership on implementation to identify an efficient management structure to address the immediate and long-term needs of the avenue. The new plan will also advance making the District of Columbia safe and beautiful by improving public space, security, and modernizing infrastructure. When complete, the new plan will replace an existing 1974 plan. It will include an executive summary and the 4 parts listed here. The project team plans to submit a detailed draft at preliminary review. First, I'll walk through the vision, aspirations, and the design approach. Pennsylvania Avenue was designed to be the physical and symbolic spine of the new republic, a people's promenade connecting 2 branches of government. As a primary thoroughfare in the new capital city, it drew activity to the city center and connected the 2 rivers at the eastern and western borders. Over time, it became a ceremonial stage, an iconic setting for presidential inaugurations, national celebrations, First Amendment activities, and local events. While Pennsylvania Avenue extends west to Rock Creek and east across the Anacostia River, our work in this presentation focused on the segment between the White House and the Capitol. Building on its unique role in history, a new vision will revitalize the avenue as the nation's most prominent civic boulevard. With its framed view of the Capitol, classical architecture at Federal Triangle, and location in the monumental core, the avenue is a historic outdoor venue for spectacular events like the upcoming IndyCar 250 and the NFL Draft. This vision will also deliver a safe, beautiful, and revitalized street in the city that the city and the nation can be proud of. In so many ways, capital cities are recognized by the grand ceremonial spaces that represent their nations. The new Pennsylvania Avenue will stand among the great, on the same global stage as the great capital city boulevards in London, Paris, and Berlin. At the same time, the avenue will be a joyful and engaging space for downtown Washington, with amenities and activities that serve visitors, residents, and workers. The new plan lays the foundation to design and implement these aspirations, addressing the corridor in 3 main public space areas shown here. Pennsylvania Avenue is where Americans unite, where we convene to act, live, and gather. The design concepts reflect key goals, objectives, and themes built upon technical analysis by subject matter experts, previous commission and public feedback, and ongoing conversations with the partner agencies. To set the stage for the design discussion, I'll quickly address the Commission's comments from the previous meeting about some of the avenue's issues and opportunities. This slide shows numerous physical issues that the avenue is facing today, including flooding, broken pavers, dying trees, and an aging modernist design. And underground is a complex mess of below-grade utilities and aging infrastructure, some dating back to the 1870s, that will need a comprehensive modernization. From the 1970s through the 90s, the avenue had a single steward, the Pennsylvania Avenue Development Corporation, or PADC. Its dissolution in 1996 caused management and funding issues that the new plan needs to address. While not the focus of this meeting, the project team is working with partner agency leadership to identify a management structure as the design concepts develop. Tongue twister. The Federal Triangle just south of the avenue will remain the symbolic core of the nation's capital, defined by its strong federal presence and neoclassical headquarters. Redevelopment potential and value at nearby federal sites, including the J. Edgar Hoover Building and the Francis Perkins Building, will help drive economic growth and bring vibrancy back downtown. I'll note that this work is progressing in coordination with local partner agencies, aligning with and finding synergies among complementary planning efforts. Because events are a critical part of the avenue's current function and new vision, the project team is addressing ways design can improve efficiency and the cost effectiveness for events of all types and sizes. The team has been working with the Military District of Washington and the Mayor's Special Events Task Group to understand critical dimensions. For example, the inaugural parade that requires a set amount of clear path for the parade, spectators, and multiple levels of security. There is consistently overwhelming demand to host events on the National Mall, which is often overprogrammed. The team is working with the National Park Service and event producers to ensure the design accommodates the needs for First Amendment activities, festivals, and other special events to reduce that pressure. The Avenue as a venue envisions a plug-and-play experience for events, reducing time for setup, teardown, and minimizing disruption to the surrounding area. The design will address multiple operational and safety considerations, including water and utility access, permanent and temporary security, emergency and first aid stations, telecommunications infrastructure, stages, tents, trash removal, and more. The design concepts are tested as they evolve to ensure they can support and ideally improve critical event needs. So now we'll look at design. For this concept review, the design team prepared design concept alternatives and options. We'll think of an alternative as a big design move and an option as a detailed way to achieve that alternative. There's a lot more detail in the project materials on our website and in the Commission's packets, but for efficiency, this presentation will summarize and focus on the big design moves, which you can see in these sub-bullets, where input is most critical at this stage. The Commission's input and public comments will inform design development in the coming months. So we'll start with a corridor between 3rd and 13th Streets Northwest. For the corridor, we're seeking input on 3 major design moves: reallocation of the roadway space, tree types, and flagpoles. Aspirations for the corridor include celebrating the viewshed and architectural character, beautifying the streetscape, providing pedestrian amenities, and upgrading security infrastructure. Today, the Avenue has 8 travel lanes and a center running bike lane. This slide shows the existing cross-section that hasn't changed since the 1970s when it was designed as a primary cross-town thoroughfare. For context, this is equivalent to the width of some interstate highways. A transportation study found that the traffic volume has reduced since the 70s and it's now oversized for current demand. The corridor-based alternative reallocates the space to 4 travel lanes, 1 turn lane, and 2 curbside zones, while shifting the center bike lane to the south side. Today's transportation needs are different than 50 years ago and need to account for rideshare pickup and drop-off, loading and deliveries, while safely accommodating multiple modes of transportation. Moving the bike lane to the south provides the additional advantage of increased security standoff for the Federal Triangle. Overall, this new configuration amounts to just 1 travel lane reduction. The second major design consideration for the corridor is street trees. Trees are an important and historic framing device that accentuate the view of the Capitol. There are 2 options: canopy trees shown on the left, and an alley of columnar trees, which we sometimes call fastigiate trees, to the right. Both options are laid out in a formal pattern next to the curb, with additional canopy and understory trees near the building line. The main difference here is in the shape and character of the trees closest to the curb. And then the third consideration for the corridor is flagpoles that enhance the ceremonial role of the street. Functionally, other vertical infrastructure may be integrated to these poles for everyday and event use, such as permanent lighting or temporary speakers and video screens. And I'll make 2 quick notes that we are showing the poles at 60 feet tall. And for comparison, other flagpoles along and adjacent to the avenue range from 40 feet to 100 feet. And also want to note that they are not designed to accommodate telecommunications infrastructure. We understand that telecom is a critical utility, but adding it to these poles would compromise their function as a consistent design feature and could become quickly outdated. So the next few slides show the base corridor configuration with the different tree and pole options. This is showing the canopy trees without poles. The canopy trees are on one side of the pedestrian promenade. They provide shade and can accommodate a larger event zone in the street. But the main framed view is best experienced from the street, as the trees may limit visibility of the Capitol from the sidewalk. This shows the canopy trees with poles. The flagpoles add a formal ceremonial element that helps define the canopy tree line and frame the Capitol vista. This shows the columnar trees without poles. The alea of columnar trees, one tree on each side of the pedestrian promenade, provides a unique formal character and direct frame view of the Capitol. It offers less shade along the sidewalk, however, it may reduce the size of event zones. And this shows the columnar trees with the poles. The flagpoles complement the upright character of the columnar trees and enhance the framed view from both the street and the sidewalk. So here are the big moves we hope to get feedback on, all on one slide. The canopies with or with poles on the left, and the columnar trees with or without poles on the right. The design concepts will be continued to be developed in further detail with a recommendation for further study on if and how functions can be integrated into the poles, including understanding their structural needs and considering ways to avoid impacting the historic character, views, and overall visual quality of the street. Next, we will look at the western end, which is near the existing Freedom Plaza. With proximity to the White House and the Wilson Building, this location is often used for First Amendment activities and local events. There are two main design moves at the western end. The historic alignment alternative restores the historic diagonal roadway alignment, creating two smaller plazas on both sides. And the central plaza alternative keeps the shape of the plaza and roadway circulation as it is today, but brings it down to the street level. Issues at the western end include the plaza's elevation, lack of shade and amenities, and a poor relationship to the surrounding buildings. Aspirations for the western end include enhancing comfort while maximizing flexibility as an event space and improving traffic circulation and access. So we'll start with the historic alignment alternative, which proposes a new design for two street-level plazas. The big move here restores the avenue's historic diagonal alignment as the primary vehicular route, shown in blue. Secondary circulation, shown with a blue hatch, provides access to adjacent buildings, and this option shows a shared street connection between the World War I Memorial and the White House Visitor Center, with driveway access to the Wilson Building. The diagonal roadway alignment creates two triangular public spaces, shown in pink. Together, these two plazas add shade and amenities, enhance the symbolic view, and create a large flexible event space. There are different ways to connect the public spaces to the adjacent buildings, and this option shows a large plaza in front of the Wilson Building. The inaugural parade route, shown in red, will follow the diagonal roadway, which helps to reduce the number of 90-degree turns the parade must make. The other alternative proposes a central street-level plaza. The big move here generally maintains the current vehicular circulation as it is today, but around a new street-level plaza. Secondary circulation, shown in the blue hatch, provides access to adjacent buildings, and this option shows a shared street condition between the National Theater and the new plaza. The central plaza and connected public spaces, shown in pink, add shade and amenities, strategic tree placement and landscape frame the symbolic view and accommodate a range of events. There are different ways to connect the public spaces with the adjacent buildings. This option shows how temporary closures could extend the plaza to the National Theater. And here, since the plaza is street level, the inaugural parade, shown in red, can still go diagonally through, again, helping to reduce the number of 90-degree turns the parade must make, which is something we heard was beneficial from the Military District of Washington. Again, so to summarize, these are the big moves for the western end that we hope to get feedback on: aligning the main roadway diagonally through on the left, or retaining a central plaza configuration on the right. Design options will continue to evolve and be presented in greater detail at preliminary review, with a recommendation for further study to refine the functional and operational requirements for circulation, public spaces, and access to adjacent buildings. The next location we'll look at is Market Square. Market Square is one of the livelier areas along the avenue due to its access to transit, proximity to downtown and the National Mall, and a mix of commercial and residential uses. There's only one design alternative for this location. Despite being well used, it suffers from disconnected public spaces on either side of the street, gaps in retail and empty ground floors, and it can be confusing to find ways to downtown, the National Mall, and other area attractions. The existing roadway alignment does not change. The options here address improvements to the public spaces and pedestrian areas shown in pink. The aspiration is to strengthen the avenue's core identity by celebrating key axes, enhancing connections to the National Mall and downtown, embracing its historical commercial character, and adding comfort amenities like trees and seating. Two options offer different ways to meet the aspirations. They both include a downtown gateway, formal and intimate garden spaces to improve Indiana Avenue, an enhanced pedestrian experience on 8th Street, and a covered marketplace and galleria off of Indiana Plaza. Design options will continue to evolve and be presented in greater detail at preliminary review, with a recommendation for further study to define and refine the functional and operational requirements of the public spaces, including their relationships to adjacent buildings, the broader public space network, and the transition between downtown and the National Mall. And finally, the last location is the eastern end at John Marshall Park. The eastern end is where most of the larger events on the avenue are staged, including an area that supports all of the back of house event supports. It steps from the Capitol grounds, the National Mall, and the National Gallery of Art. There is only one design alternative for this location. Despite its size, John Marshall Park is highly underutilized and has minimal visibility with elevation changes that impact access. The park is surrounded by a high concentration of daytime uses, such as courthouses, law enforcement, and embassy buildings that don't generally enliven the space and have robust layers of security requirements. Oops, there's a lag. The existing roadway alignment does not change. The options here address improvements to the public spaces and pedestrian areas shown in pink. Aspirations are to create a flexible event space that supports daily use, enhances comfort, preserves the 4th Street viewshed, and improves access and security. 3 design options offer different ways to meet the aspirations. They all include designs that address the grade change, integrate amenities and event support infrastructure, use landscape to create shade and accommodate a range of event sizes, and enhance views along the 4th Street axes. Again, design options will continue to evolve and be presented in greater detail at preliminary review, with a recommendation to further study and define the functional operational requirements of the public space, relationship to adjacent buildings, broader public space network, and transition between downtown and the National Mall. As I mentioned, concurrent with concept development, the project team is working with partner agency leadership on implementation. The goal is to identify an efficient management structure that can address the immediate and long-term needs of the avenue. Recognizing that a project of this size, complexity, and ambition doesn't happen overnight, the design team is also thinking ahead to factor how construction can be phased over time so that the corridor, public spaces, and/or smaller focused interventions could be implemented in phases in any combination or order as funding is available. Looking forward, we are looking forward to coming back to the Commission this fall for preliminary review and early next year for final review. As a reminder, our project deliverable is a new plan, which will include a schematic design that addresses both physical design and infrastructure modernization and provides guidance for detailed final design and construction documents in the next phase of work. I've highlighted the key comments and recommendations in the presentation. As a reminder, today's presentation focused on the big moves we hope to get feedback on, and design concepts will be further refined and developed for preliminary review. And before I wrap up, I'd like to give an overview of our upcoming public engagement opportunities. We'll have many opportunities for the public to take a closer look at the design concepts this month and provide input. We're hosting 2 online public meetings on the 8th and the 22nd. This is also an opportunity for the public to engage with the design team, and we'll have questions and answers. And we're also accepting comments submitted to our website through April 30th. And starting next week, there will be a Pennsylvania Avenue display at the National Building Museum, showcasing a lot of the content that we walked through today. That will also be up until April 30th. So with that, thank you, Chairman Sharp and Commissioners. That concludes my presentation. I will note that the NCPC team, David Rubin from David Rubin Lane Collective, and Doug Davies and Lee Farmer from VHB from the design team are here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Karen. Do any commissioners have any questions at this time? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve comments on design concepts for the new plan for Pennsylvania Avenue?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second? With that, I will now open it up to the commission for discussion, and I'll start deliberations with Commissioner Stidham. You're up.
It's hard to speak about this project because I've been working on it for so long and partnership with everyone. And I have to say, to be at this point is fabulous. I think I've said for many years, we'll never get to this point, and here we are. So it's great to have some ideas, some big moves before us for consideration. So I don't think much of what I'm going to say is going to be a surprise to those who've been working on the project. Feedback on the big moves. I think for the corridor configuration, I think the canopy trees do the best job at framing the avenue and giving that sense of space while providing that pedestrian shade that everyone needs so badly. I'm not a fan of the poles. I get the move that makes and the symbology that brings. But I'm concerned with its introduction as an element on this very important avenue and what they may be used for in the future. Everyone sees a pole differently. So from the Park Service's perspective, that pole also can be lights, it can be a telecom feature, it can be something no one has even dreamed of yet. And I think it provides management and operational challenges that we can't even think of today. And I think there may be other temporary ways to provide that same symbolic nature as a permanent pole was in a way that is more synthetic of
You're watching First Edition, folks. A shortage of diesel could affect the provision of power to communities in the Northern Territory. More than 50 remote power stations run on diesel. The government says suppliers have not yet been impacted.
It's the lifeblood of the Northern Territory.
Our diesel usage, and we use more than anywhere else in the country.
As the cost of diesel soars, the ramifications are being felt across the NT.
I mean, we are seeing in remote parts of the Territory at the moment, people paying up to $4 or $3.99 a litre for fuel.
Labor MP Chancey Paik represents a large remote electorate in central Australia. He says the flow-on effects of rising fuel costs are hitting hard.
What we're seeing is a significant increase and pressure put on, fresh fruit and vegetables in remote communities across the Territory. It's not uncommon for someone to be paying, up to $8 for a bottle of fresh milk in a remote community.
But this crisis
we have a string of them. It could be misused maybe in some ways. And I think that may be something you can look at. I don't know how you can replace that, but whatever. I also think that the Freedom Plaza concept of dividing that helps make that turn a less sharp turn for those marching forces. I marched in a lot of parades in many different ways. And I think that it makes it easier when you have a unit moving. So that's great. And the other places, other suggestions are great, good ones as well. I can only remember sometime when I was a younger person. Here we go, Mr. Chairman. And I would go to the parades. I had to stand. I used to climb up in the bushes at 7th and Pennsylvania Avenue. You could purchase up on a bush and get perspective to see the parades. So I still don't have a place to go these days, but now we'll at least have some options that maybe I won't have to worry about bushes to be able to get up one as a kid.
Nowadays, if you tried to perch yourself on those bushes, the National Park Service will be on you in a second, sir. So
absolutely. So anyway, I like what's going on. I appreciate the support. Particularly impressed with the crew that's working on it and the staff's effort. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cash.
Nothing else to add. I associate myself with everyone else's comments, and thanks for the work, ongoing work on this project. It's been a long time coming.
Thank you, Commissioner. Oh, sure.
I'm sorry, just to jump back in. I know there's a request for, I think, $3.9 million to go ahead and take the next step. I just want to let you know we've approved that. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you, Administrator Forrest. Talk about mic drop, Mo. I wish I had millions of dollars to throw around on projects. Commissioner Henderson.
If there's a move to get away from the polls, I think losing the ability to display flags along the avenue would be a loss. So I don't know how that would get replaced if it weren't for polls. I'm sure there's other good ideas. I would just still argue for the flag here. And that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Giacchetti. Did we lose Commissioner Giacchetti? We can come back to him. Commissioner Cozart.
Yes, I just want to say appreciation to the staff for this. Not only do they report on this, but it's also they've put in a lot of work and a lot of leadership around this effort, and that's greatly appreciated. And we're happy to be in partnership with them to really think about operationalizing this. I associate myself with the comments of other commissioners, and I just want to lift up the importance of Market Square as a way to really make the connection between the waterfront, which has had a lot of both federal and local investment, to revitalize and making the way all the way up 7th Street. Market Square is an important kind of gateway into the downtown of the district, which we're working really hard to revitalize with sports and entertainment and other really important things. So that's a great stopover, and really impressed with the evolution of the designs for there. Interested in seeing the continued evolution for the other parts of the avenue as well, because there's definitely some visual analysis and design challenges. Look forward to seeing how we square those up as the submission goes forward in the fall.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Solisas?
So as a new participant, I'm just really impressed with the presentation and the work that is done here. It's really impressive. As we get to the avenue, to the National Avenue, I do think the canopy trees, having walked that many times, especially in the summer, it's nice to have that shade. So I think that's important. And I do think at some point, how we can display flags is also a very important aspect of this. I'm a little surprised on the 90-degree turn thing from the military. Maybe we should just have Marines lead all the parades. They have no problem with 90-degree turns, I can tell you.